Hi and welcome to my channel, Beekeeping Made Simple. Today I'm going to talk to you about preparing your beehive for winter. Now I know especially for you beginner beekeepers this can be a little bit scary, all that hard work caring for your bees, and now you're just supposed to leave them out in the freezing cold for months? Seriously? I'm going to walk through step by step what I do to prepare my hives for winter here in southeastern Pennsylvania. The climate zone is about 7A. We get some cold temperatures, well below freezing in the daytime in January, but snow is not constantly on the ground like it is in some of the northern states. I am going to explain why I'm doing what I'm doing and alternative options for you to help you understand what you should be doing where you are. Temperatures are getting cooler out, and thanks to technology, we could see 10-day weather forecasts. And we are seeing that temperatures are in the low 70s or high 60s. And we want to prepare our beehive for winter before it's getting below 65 Fahrenheit out. So we're going to be taking that liquid feed off if it was in your hive and taking that empty box off as well. And now we have our hive. So let's start at the bottom. First, we have the hive stand. 18 inches is that sweet spot in which it won't get too much attention from skunks for whatever reason. Maybe you don't have that issue, but if you do, you might want to elevate your hive to that sweet spot. Having it get the morning sun, southeast, is always great as well in the wintertime. Next, we have the bottom board. All of my hives are on solid bottoms, except for one that came with a screen bottom. So if your hive is on a screen bottom and you want to make it a solid, it should have come with a piece of plastic to block it off. This is called Coroplast. You can also find it at most hardware stores. And most screen bottoms have that little notch in there so that you can slide this in. Some beekeepers like to have that extra ventilation. If you choose to do that, I would go with still put a screen here, but just cut it down a little bit so that this guy over here, can put that here so that it blocks off a lot of the screen but offers a little bit of space here. And that would be better if you are concerned about ventilation because you get a lot of snow and there are going to be times when you can't get out there to make sure that the warm air coming out of the hive has made a little tunnel so that the bees have air. Or if your beehive is further away and you're not going to be able to go out there to scoop out all of those dead bees and make sure the entrance is clear as often as you would like. If you have one of these guys, it's called a slatted rack. These are always nice to put on top, but definitely optional. I have one on just one of my beehives. And this can prevent swarming, especially if you are concerned that your bees might swarm in the early springtime before you get a chance to open it. And can also just elevate where the brood is clustered in the box from the cool air coming in through that lower entrance. The next part is the entrance. You are going to want to reduce the entrance. You can buy one of these handy little entrance reducers, or you can just block it off with pieces of wood. What I'm doing is I block off the entrance to the larger size, not the smallest size, and then I take an additional piece of wood to block it off so it is about 2 inches wide. The reason why I do this is because I want to make it easier for myself to be able to get a little tool in there to scoop out dead bees. And when your entrance is on the smallest, this little inch, it's just a little bit harder. The entrance reducer I actually like to put on at the very start, way before I prepare my hive for winter. I do it at the start of robbing season, which is once I've harvested the honey and I am starting to see that the amount of honey in the hive is going down, the bees are a little frenzied, they are a little overly aggressive, or I'm seeing bees walking around other parts of the hive. Those are signs of robbing, and that's when I reduce my entrance to this size. If it is hot out, bees are bearding, clustered outside, fanning down the hive, you don't want to reduce the entrance too small, but if it is cooler temperatures in the 70s, not too hot, then that's when I reduce the entrance. Then we have the mouse guard. The mouse guard should be metal. It can be this, just cut out of 1/2-inch hardware cloth, or it can be the metal kind that you find in beekeeping supply sites. And this is put over in front of the entrance reducer. Mice can chew through wood, so you do not want just a wooden block for the mice. And this gets put on once it is getting cooler out at nighttime, you know, mid-50s or lower Fahrenheit, and you want to keep the mice from finding a place to make their winter home. Now, if it's still in the 70s in the daytime, you do not need your mouse guard on. But once it's dipping below 70s in the daytime and below 50s at nighttime, that's when you put the mouse guard on. And the mouse guard can be taken off later once mice have already established their home, but you want it on now when they are looking for somewhere nice and warm for the winter time. And you can keep these on just with little push pins in place, and then you can easily take it off when you need to scoop out the dead bees. Okay, next let's talk about boxes. This is where the art of beekeeping comes in. One of my hives is one deep box, and the box above that is really just a feeder shim. I have one hive that is just one deep 10-frame box, plus one medium up above it full of honey. One of my hives is two deep 10-frame boxes, and I have another hive that is just one deep 8-frame box with nothing full of honey up above that. The reason why I have these differences is because the one box is, the two hives that are just one deep box with no box of honey above that are hives that have not a lot of brood. The cluster size is about 5 frames of bees, and they both had queen issues a little bit later on in the season. They both have a healthy queen that is laying, and they have a big enough size population that they need a full box, not a nuke, but they don't need 2 boxes. And so there's 2 parts to figuring out how many boxes and what size boxes you should put on the hive. One is how big is this cluster of bees? How many bees do you have? And 2 is how much honey do you need? Here in southeastern Pennsylvania, 35 pounds of honey is sufficient. The beehive itself would probably be weighing about 70 to 80 pounds. Now, I am not weighing my hives. I just didn't. You can use a suitcase scale or a little kitchen scale, the fishing scales that people use, if you want to weigh each individual frame. But I will tell you that a medium-sized frame, when full of honey, is usually about 3 to 5 pounds, 5 pounds being like on the heavier side. And a deep frame can weigh up to 7 pounds when it's like really full and capped. But probably is going to be more between like 5 to 7 pounds. So if you have a smaller cluster of bees with just like a few frames of brood in the center, but it holds 10 frames and those 10 frames are full, then you probably have 5 to 7 frames of honey. If you have a much bigger cluster of bees and you have quite a few frames that the queen's still laying on, open brood, capped brood, then that's only allowing you maybe 2 frames of honey on each side of the cluster. And that's not enough for the bees to get through winter, and you're going to need another box on top. Now, you might not have the option. If you have just deep frames of honey and no medium frames left because you harvested them all, then that's your option. But if you do have medium frames, a deep box plus a medium box on top when working with 10 frame boxes is usually sufficient for a majority of the United States. If you are above Pennsylvania, you're looking at New York and above, where you need 50 to 70 pounds of honey, then you might want a full deep box full of honey on top of your first box of bees. You don't want too much space for your cluster. And I know a lot of beekeepers who actually just overwinter their bees in one deep box. And the thing is that bees don't need a ton of honey when it is winter time. They actually will consume more honey when it gets warm out and the hive heats up and they leave, and then they go back in and cluster up when it gets cold out at night, and the temperature swings up and down, and it goes from the high 50s to 30s as the daytime high. When it is really cold out, bees go into this state which is called torpor, and it is similar to a hibernation state, but it is not voluntary. And bees aren't the only animals that do this. There are mice and some bats that also go into this torpor state, and it usually just is for a few hours. I have links in the video description if you want to learn more about torpor. Really, I would say that make sure your bees have at least 4 good solid frames of honey. Pack that bottom box with as much honey as you can with those big heavy frames. And if you are looking in your hive and saying there is no way on God's green earth I can combine all of my bees into this one deep box, then maybe you need a second one on top. But do not go beyond those 2 boxes if you are looking at 10 frame boxes, because what's going to happen is if you have these 3 10-frame boxes stacked up on top of each other and the bees are clustered at the bottom making heat, other frames, the frames of honey will have condensation on them. It won't just be on the lid and the walls of the hive. And so you don't want condensation dripping down from frames in the 3rd box up onto your cluster down below. Above the upper box, I have my emergency feed. So what I do is I have a feeder shim. This one I purchased and it came with an upper entrance which I blocked off because I do not have upper entrances on my beehives. And so I have this very thin piece. Cutting down boxes that are broken on the corners is also a great option instead of buying a feeder shim or making one. And so I just take 2 pieces of wood, lay their feeder shim down, and once it gets colder out, low 50s, mid 40s in the daytime, that's when I am going to add my candy bricks. I have a link in the video description to 2 different candy options. An alternative is to put hardware cloth on the bottom of this, and then you can make a candy board, pack it with candy. But I like the feeder shim because this is on my beehive empty right now. So the bees, everything is set up. This is on. I put it on before it got cold out, and the bees could propolize the edges. Everything is set up, so when it's cooler out, I can throw the candy on. I do not want to put the candy on when it is above that mid 50 range because there are ants, there is robbing. I do not want to attract the bees to come up here to start eating this candy. I don't want to attract too many bees up here. I want them to be down in this lower box. Next, I have the inner cover. Since this one has a notch on it, I flip it up. An alternative that I am trying on one of my hives is the opposite. Instead of having your food directly above the bars, you can put your inner cover first. You can even put it notched down if you want to give the bees an exit, which is a great spot right here up at the top of the hive. And then you can put your feed over this. You can buy fondant, you can buy sugar from a number of beekeeping supply sites, or you can make it. The benefit to this way is that if you were really concerned about your bees, you're not sure when to put this on, how fast they're going to get up here, you can do it this way. And this allows you to be able to look in and replace the sugar without so much heat getting lost from the hive or bothering the bees too much. The other way, it's all open. So it's up to you to do which way you like. I have insulated inner covers on 2 of my hives, and so those covers, although great, are not meant to have a feeder shim above. It has a huge gap. I've heard of people using spray foam as a way to fill in those gaps, but it's a little late in the year for me to do that, and I'm a little concerned about what kind of spray foam is best to use in this situation, because you don't want anything that off gases into your beehive. And never place pollen or sugar bricks directly onto your board or onto your frames. Have them elevated with something that is at least 1/4 of an inch. And this is partially because of small hive beetles, so that they aren't under there. Some people also will put a small piece of pollen patty, but because I come from Hawaii, and pollen patties were a huge way that small hive beetles, their larvae, would slime up and really just take over. I'm not putting that in until January, when the queen starts laying, or early February, depending on the weather. Next, we have our outer cover plus insulation. Because hot air rises and you want the condensation to form on the walls of the beehive and not on the lid, so that it does not drip down, you want to place some insulation inside your telescoping outer cover. 1 to 2 inch thick foam is great. I have read that the pink panther and the blue stuff is not good because it can off gas, but beekeeping supply sites do sell the foam, or you can get ones that are safe for bees. Now, when you do all this, you want to do it before it's getting cold out, as I said, like, at least low 70s. But there is nothing wrong with doing this even sooner, because I tried this. They say that an insulated outer cover, putting insulation inside this, is great not only in the cold weather but in the warm weather, because it's keeping the temperature inside the hive. But I found the bees eating this. I heard them chewing on it from outside the hive. And so, if you're going to use foam like this, I wrap it in this aluminum tape. This is flex foil. Wrap it in something so the bees can't eat it. Or you can do what I did, and I just got myself some insulated outer covers. And then you don't have to worry about insulation, or you can put a small piece of foam. But this is the Beemax insulated outer cover. I do have a polystyrene hive, so their covers automatically are insulated. And this is Bee Smart insulated outer cover. So it's in the high 50s today. It's already later out. Sun has gone down. And I want to show you my hives so you can see how I've done it. I have my cinder blocks, solid bottom, entrance reducer, plus extra shim to reduce it further, mouse guard on top, 1 deep 10 frame box, plus 1 medium 10 frame box above that. I have a insulated inner cover by Bee Smart on top of that, and above that is a feeder shim, which is empty and ready for the sugar bricks. I have my Beemax insulated outer cover for wooden hives. We had our roof redone this spring, so the extra roofing tiles they left at the house I put on top just for some extra sun absorption. I have the lids strapped down because I always have them strapped down. A lot of critters like to come in. And then I have a heavy rock on top, and I just have them on all of them because before I was putting the straps on and opening them often. But if you have that foam inside, a heavy rock on top is good so that it just like weighs down the hive. This is a polystyrene hive. It has the mouse guard different style mouse guard. It has the entrance reducer behind that. It has just one 10 frame deep box. This is what I'm using as a feeder shim because, you know, I didn't want to put wood on top of the poly hives. It seemed silly. And then their lid. Inside the feeder shim, I have empty space for the candy bricks to go inside. And then finally, since I just put this all together, but temperatures are dipping down into the high 30s at night, I put some tape. First, I put electrical tape around and then the roll ran out. So I have duct tape around any crevices. This hive, I have my Wi-Fi hive scale on the back of, which is super convenient to see how much the hive weighs. On the cinder blocks, back is elevated a few degrees. I blocked off, reduced the entrance and did it a little bit further with this wood piece. I have the mouse guard on top, and this has 2 deep 10 frame boxes. Feeder shim. Yep, this one has the insulated inner cover. Upper entrance is blocked off. And then the Be Smart outer cover. This is my keeper's hive. And the keeper's hive is really, the way that the one box keeper's hive works is it really leads the bees to have a much smaller brood nest. So this box is just one box, 8 frames. They did requeen late in the season, so they are the smallest of the hive, even without it being a keeper's hive. I have it on the cinder blocks, solid bottom, reduced the entrance, mouse guard, 1 deep box. And then I know on their YouTube channel he said not necessary, but I made my own feeder shim. It's 2 colors because I made it first, the depth I would make a feeder shim, but because of this piece that comes over here, I couldn't put the lid on. It was elevated, so I had an extra piece. And inside I will be putting sugar bricks, and I put some foam in there just to take up that extra gap of space. And then there is my insulation, and here's my outer cover. And that is what I am doing to overwinter my beehive. I would really love it if you added in tips and tricks and things that you know about overwintering bees in your area, because lots of people read the comments and you might be helping out someone else in your area by adding in what you do and when to help the bees. Thanks for watching. See you next time. I will be making a video about treating for varroa mites once temperatures are below 55 degrees Fahrenheit out and it is too cold to open the beehive.